How do you know for sure that what you believe to be intuition is reliable, that you can trust it, that you can take it to the bank, so to speak? We've all come to realize the value, the importance of intuition, especially when we can integrate it with logic, critical thinking skills, higher thinking functions of the brain. It makes an ideal complement so that we can what? You can innovate, you can solve more problems, identify problems, maybe prevent them, write a book, get inspiration. You know what I'm referring to, all throughout the ages. Some of the greatest innovations, some of the greatest breakthroughs in science, in medicine, in industry, in technology, in the arts, have been because someone was what? Dreaming big, had such a high level of creative expression that they then worked on it and worked on it. Intuition, whether you call it intuition, gut feeling, hunch, inspiration, creativity, remote viewing, many names, women's intuition. You know this, somehow, some way, each of us can access a stream of consciousness, an altered state of consciousness that goes beyond what we call logic, reasoning, critical thinking, that is very much predetermined and stuck in what we know to be the science of it, so to speak. And science is changing. Every year there are new breakthroughs, new understandings, especially when it comes to the brain. So it begins with somehow accessing this, some call it divine guidance, your inner compass, your inner Google. I can remember, I've been doing this work for nearly 50 years, and just as a quick example, because I want to share with you just where this could be. I started in 1971 at the ripe age of 19 as a full-time student at Boston University. And while in Boston, I got to meet Dr. Armand Bose. You know, Bose as in the Bose speakers and that incredible stereo system? Well, way before it became corporatized and what it's become today, he was at MIT. He took the Silva training with us in the Boston, not with me, but with my director. And that led him to his innovations, his breakthroughs. He then hired one of our instructors, my director, to teach in Framingham, Massachusetts for a little over a year, like a year and a half. And I met engineers, I met staff. It became part of their professional development. He had a meditation room, which we called an alpha breakout room. He had guided meditations, things accessed them. And he found that they were working more effectively, being more innovative, getting more done in less time, less absenteeism. Whoa. Now fast forward to a little more current. In the late 1990s, Robert Stiller, who founded Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. They're based in Waterbury, Vermont. And then in the early 2000s, I got to meet him and did trainings there at Waterbury, my graduate advanced program. And he actually put through a young woman through certification with me. As you may know, I train instructors. I certify instructors for about, now going on a little over, 30 years, maybe a little more. And anyway, she became their in-house Silva Method instructor. And he found it to be one of the best investments he made to help people, to support his people for their health, their well-being, and for productivity and innovation. And there are countless in between. I've had the pleasure to work with Olympic athletes, equestrians, weightlifters, martial artists at an Olympic level. And the list just goes on and on. Writers, you may remember the story of Richard Bach. He's just one of many. Louise Hay, Jack Canfield, T. Harv Eker, Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley, famous psychics and mediums. Well, why is that so? And what is it about that? Well, first, way back in 1966, Mr. Silva made a statement that everybody has intuition and it can be trained. But admittedly, it's a slippery slope. So to go back to my original question, and what I want to help you with today is, it's a slippery slope because it comes from the same place, this gut feeling, this hunch, this intuitive insight as, it's mixed with our emotions. And that can confuse us. So I want you to know that I spend 4 full days. It's my passion. It's probably the most significant distinction of the Silva Method training that we've been doing since 1966. Nowadays, most parts of the world have upgraded to a bit more advanced aspect of the program called Silva Life System and Silva Intuition System, and I offer it as the immersion. Or even in my a little more than half a day workshop called Intuition in You, the Lost Sense. The point is, I've observed and identified very specific principles that are important. I've also identified things that get in the way, distortions. And that's where I want to zero in now on this particular video, which I'll call part 2 of a series that I've been releasing slowly but surely. So what I mean by, let's look at it, the distortions. The distortion simply meaning much like your cell phone. How many times have you been walking a long walk or a hike and the cell service is interrupted? Or you're driving on an interstate and you go into a dead zone and the call's dropped. Or during stormy conditions, we've been having here in New England lots of snow and cold weather and high winds. And when there's storms like that, it can interfere with what? The signal, and create distortions on the line that it sounds funny or odd, or it's difficult connecting. Well, it's much like that with our intuition. We all, so to speak, pick up the vibes. Some of us do it visually. Some of us have a feeling, kinesthetic. Some of us perhaps hearing. But the fact remains, somehow, some way, we can bypass our logic, our reasoning, our physical senses that usually is attributed in terms of brain wave activity, beta type senses, to this inner guidance. And when you can control it and direct it and understand, identify these distortions and manage them, it could save your life. It could be one of the best investments in your life to work on this, because you'll be able to identify problems, get to their root, and solve them and or prevent them. Innovate, improve your business, scale up your business, hire better people, go on an interview and be at your best, figure things out. I mean, the list goes on. So the first distortion, I want to cover 3 with you. There are more. I mean, we could spend hours and hours, but 3 primary distortions I want to share with you now would be, number 1, and you could probably guess it, wishful thinking. Wishful thinking. You know, that passion, that desire, that yes, I want this. This is important. But that can confuse us, because sometimes we want something so much. It's so important to us, so valuable, which motivates us, which kicks us in the butt, gets us up in the morning, but it can cause what I'll call a projection, meaning we're blindsided. We're too attached to it. We want it so badly that it distorts the truth. So the first step is with intuition. The tip is you want to be an observer. No judgment, no analysis, no at all. Just observe, and report. And you want to look for first impressions, instinctive impressions, where it almost feels like you're making it up. Because if you spend time on it, thinking about it, that's logic, that's reasoning. Now, it's not a bad thing, logic. We need more logic, critical thinking. But there is a world of difference between objective mode of consciousness, logic, reasoning, critical thinking skills, and the subjective mode, which goes into nonverbal communication, inner feeling, sensing, what physicists are now calling in quantum physics non-locality. So the first step is to get to the point where you're just making an observation, no analysis, no buying into, just first impressions. So wishful thinking, as an example, would be, people say, oh, I keep hearing this number, 222. That's my number for the lottery. That's clearly wishful thinking. In fact, I was raised by gamblers in my background. That's another story. I've got a video somewhere out there floating about that. And I watched more people lose their businesses, more men who I looked up to, because there's a song by Kenny Rogers. Those of you too young, you don't remember him. You got to know when to hold and you got to know when to fold. So yeah, it's possible to use your intuition like that, but it's very tricky, because when you've got wishful thinking, you want it, it distorts the truth. It interferes. It is a high skill level, and it takes practice, it takes training, and it takes practice. It's not a quick fix. And anybody who tells you it is, run, because they're just exaggerating to try to sell you something. It takes a lot of practice with that, and it can be done with that. So the wishful thinking is a projection that we want it so badly. We're thinking. A lot of people have superstitions, oh, don't walk under a ladder, or don't break glass, or this and that. And those are clearly superstitions that are founded on beliefs that have been ingrained through, if you will, a cultural hypnosis, a social hypnosis. So the first step is to be able to know what's the difference that makes the difference between an intuitive insight that works, that's valuable, that proves to be accurate, and one that's nothing more than wishful thinking. So you've got to contrast them based on experience you've had, so start journaling it. Second distortion would be, can you guess? Big one, especially today during this craziness out there in this period of time, fear. Oh my God. That's probably the worst pandemic, the one that concerns more people, thought leaders like myself, than anything. Yes, it's very real, the pandemic. Yes, they're very real concerns. I'm not minimizing it. But the point is, when you go into fear, you go into survival mode. When you go into fear mode, survival mode, you cause your body, your brain to release more cortisol, more stress hormones, and that compromises the immune system. You've heard this, come on, if you've been around for the past 50 years or more, there are thousands and thousands of studies about what distress that we don't manage in our body, that we store in the body, that we repress, how it weakens our immune system, compromises our health, and makes us more vulnerable to infection and disease. And the same is true when it comes to intuition. Because people sometimes, if they're in fear that something may happen, what if this, what if that, what if I don't do it? I was on the phone coaching somebody, one of my Silva students. Whenever I do a training, I offer them my services, complimentary coaching with me for a period of time to help them finalize and put it. And I had to help the guy, and I won't mention his name as a courtesy, but he wasn't even practicing because he was doubting himself. What if this, and what if it doesn't work? That's how fear blindsides us. Remember the acronym FEAR? False events appearing real. Give you a quick example. Want to play a game? Let's play a game. I love playing games in my courses, in my workshops. I call it, let's just play games. That's the surest way. Another tip to access intuition. Have playful curiosity. So important. So imagine this. You wake up from a dream, a lucid dream. And in this dream, you're jumping up and down because you've won a multi-million-dollar, let's say $10 million lottery. And people are calling you, your family and friends that you didn't even know you had have heard the news, and they all want a piece. Got the picture? It's so convincing. It was so real. It's like you could taste it. So tell me, would you go out and buy at least one lottery ticket? Maybe two. I'm not a gambler. I don't buy lottery tickets. I think I've maybe in my whole life bought one, if that. And yet I'd be tempted too. Of course, I understand. Suppose, though, in that dream, you saw that you went to the bank. You either maxed out your credit cards or took a loan or took it out of savings, $30,000 US. And then went and bought $30,000 worth of lottery tickets. And then won 10 million plus. Whew, that's an incredible rate of return. So would you go out and get $30,000 somehow, some way, borrow it, take a loan, credit card maxed out, and buy $30,000 worth of lottery tickets after that dream? Most people, when I survey this, whether I'm with a group of 24, which is what our virtual classes we do, which are limited to, or hundreds, most people, the hands go down. No way. Why? Well, obvious. It's a big risk. What if, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? That's a lot of money to lose. So unless you're a high risk taker, like some of you entrepreneurs out there, more than likely you're not going to do it. Far better to take a calculated risk, an educated risk. That's not gambling. But gambling comes from a place of wishful thinking, and fear distorts it. So sometimes you're on the verge, you're on the cusp of a breakthrough in your life, of maybe creating a new business, writing a book, whatever it might be, and you've been inspired. Come on, be honest with yourself. You know this. And what's the one thing holding you back? I don't want to be disappointed. Who's going to buy the book? Well, if it doesn't work, what? That's how fear blindsides us. Third distortion, very important equally. And this is really very significant because all through history, we witness this. And it's honest. It's honest. Within your life's experience, within the domain of your life's experience, we all have a bias. Of course. For example, in medical science, let's be fair. When people go to med school and they're studying, now I believe it's changing somewhat, but for the most part, they study, they're scientists at heart, doctors, and they study, and this is what they know, especially in their specialty. And they may be the best of the best, and this is what they know. So when you ask a doctor, well, doc, I have this nerve damage. Will exercise help? Many say no. You talk to someone who is a body worker, massage therapist, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist. They'll say, you're kidding me? Of course it can help. It's a different mode. They have a different life experience. They know what they know based on their training, yes, and all the thousands of patients they work with. So you got to give them a break. That's what they know. So each of us, whenever there's a new innovation in technology, in industry, people always say, no way. I mean, I know this is an old example, but it's classic. When Tesla and Edison were both head-to-head working on creating electric light, people of the day said, are you nuts? We have gas lamps, they work perfectly fine. And the rest is history. The same is true with just about every major innovation. Because within the domain of each individual's life experience, we know what we know. In the Silva Method, we refer to it often within the realm of our outer conscious level, our normal waking state that's governed by logic and reasoning and training. And it's important, of course it is. However, you've heard the expression, when you step out of the box, so to speak, when you change your point of view and you think of possibilities. In fact, when you just think of wild possibilities, like a mastermind, a mastermind or people get together and brainstorm. Very important that there's no criticism, there's no critique, there's no analysis, and you might get 100 examples that are wild and crazy. All it takes is one. So in order to allow that, do this as an experiment with family or friends or co-workers. Sit down, have your own little mastermind, and set up a rule. No criticism, no analysis, and just a project you're working on that you're jointly, and just let it rip. Ideas, possibilities. Just let it rip until something makes sense. And then, of course, you have to work on it. Do you get the idea? It is such an important life skill to have, intuition. Anytime, and especially nowadays, to get to the truth. There is so much information. You know, I've been doing this work. I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people. In-person classes. God only knows how many virtually or videos in the training. And even with all that, I'm in my 50th year of being a voracious reader and trainer and student. I admit it's still tricky. It takes a lot of practice, and yet it is so valuable because there's so much misinformation out there. People are really abusing social media. Have you noticed? People, just because they're publishing it and it's there in writing doesn't mean it's true. There's a lot of lying. There's a lot of distortions to the truth. There's a lot of, so what's in your heart? What's in your gut? So how can you make that distinction? Here's another tip, very important for you. And I wish I had more time, and maybe one day you'll grace me. Right now, because of the pandemic, I'm offering my classes virtually. And I, Mr. Old School here, am so pleasantly surprised. Whoa, I have to make a lot more effort and a lot more different things, but the virtuals are almost nearly as impactful as when we're in person. And that's the feedback I'm getting from people. So I've had to make a lot of change. And all throughout, we're playing games with intuition. And what's important is you need to have your own reference points. You need to know in your own experience what's the difference that makes the difference from when you're wishfully thinking and when it's intuition you can count on, or when it's just fear-based thinking or intuition that's really coming from a place of innovation and inspiration. We call them in the Silva Method points of reference. And a point of reference is simply based on your life's experiences, something you can look back on. You have evidence. Hey, I've been there, I've done that, I've had this experience. And you can begin to contrast when you're on the money and when you're off. It's not a one-shot deal. Please, if you resonate with what I'm saying, just know that it's not a one-shot deal. It takes a lot of practice. But I can tell you, as you continually practice, you begin to recognize patterns. It becomes more and more commonplace, and you will get to the place of, I know what I know. I know I can trust this. And even then, still, it's good to practice. So you want to journal your experiences, and you want to compare and contrast and reflect on those distinctions when you've been on, when you've been off, or when you've been on, when you've been off. And begin to look for the patterns. Begin to recognize those distinctions. That's why in our class, we spend 4 full days in Life and Intuition System, even virtually. And we're constantly practicing with what we call, what's been called in peak performance studies, deliberate practice. The best way, most important way, is getting feedback immediately. So you apply a technique. We do lots of guided meditations. We have exercises, ways to evaluate your intuition. And you get immediate feedback while you're in this state, while you're having that experience, so that you can say, okay, and you begin to recognize it. It's the surest, most effective way I know. I don't mean to spoil it, but you're not going to get it from reading a book. You're not going to get it from being on some pre-recorded video. You're not going to get it. You need to exercise it. Even doing exercises like this, there are all sorts of games online you can get. When you're working with another person, we find that it's more dynamic, there's more energy, it's more interactive. And thanks to Zoom, we can do breakout rooms. So whether you do Silva or not, find a way to get that kind of feedback working with people. I would be honored to be your trainer, whether it be in my workshop, Intuition in You, or the Silva Life and Intuition System. It's a blast. There's so much to it. So until the next time, remember 2 things I want you to remember about yourself. You are far more than what you appear to be. In fact, you're better. And second, it is my hope, it is my dream, my vision, that you will do good and make a contribution. As you develop these life skills, you'll help yourself create a better life for you, for your family, for your community, and that ultimately for our world that we live in, so that we can solve some of our problems, so that we can have a better world for those who follow. That's the mission statement of the Silva Method, to help humanity evolve. So do some good, find a way, some random acts of kindness, make a contribution somehow, some way, maybe just to your family, make a phone call, check in on people who maybe are isolated and don't have anybody living with them and they're lonely. It's not a fun time for people. Have lots of fun while you're doing this. Make it fun. It's the easiest way to access it and thrive. That's right, and thrive.